Hey everybody, welcome back to Trinity Dairy. Today's video we're going to be showing you our milking system, what we have for a system, how it works, how all the cows are housed, and different stuff like that. We'll be talking about all that. So we'll start here. We're in the milk house right now. So this is one of our milkers. We have 6 units, we'll call this. And we have a pipeline system. So what that means is there is a stainless steel pipe, basically just like this one, that runs around the whole barn where all the cows are, and this can hook into it, so the milk is transported directly from the cow through that pipe and into the bulk tank here where it's refrigerated. So this milking unit, so here you have your shell. The stainless steel part is the shell, and this inflation inside is what goes on the cow. And this is what that inflation looks like. It's just a rubber tube, basically. It goes all the way through. And there's vacuum between this shell and that causes this to pulse on and off like this. So it gives a milk phase and a rest phase. And then the milk goes down into here, and then it goes up this silicone tube into the pipeline. So our system... So we have a stall barn, so the cows are out on pasture. They get brought in the barn, get grained in the barn, milked, and then they go back out on pasture. That's all summer. Even now in November, they're still doing that, weather permitting. In the wintertime, when the weather gets really bad, really cold, they stay in all night. They get grain, hay, silage, everything in the barn. They have water. And then usually we try to let them out at least an hour a day, unless it's really nasty. Some winters they're able to go out a lot more, but we keep good bedding under them and everything so they have a comfortable place to lay. The newer style facilities have milking parlors or even robotic milkers now, and there's so many different kinds of them. You have pit parlors and flat parlors and carousel parlors and all that kind of stuff. But mainly those have a big building that the cows are housed in, so they can move around in the building. They can lay down, they can eat, they have water. But they stay in that building, and then they're brought in groups and milked in groups. So you can milk a lot more cows more efficiently with a parlor than a setup like we have. So we can only milk 6 at a time, and then you keep moving the milk units down the barn. Robotic milker, they have a freestall barn, same as a parlor or similar. And then there's a robotic unit, or maybe 2 or 3, depending on how many cows you have. And the cows will voluntarily go in there when they think they need to get milked. And the computer reads a caller, tells if that cow's been milked or not. And it'll milk the cow, and the cow just goes on its way. So our system is pretty old for today's milking systems. But when this came out, this was a pretty popular. Pretty much all farms in the U.S. had this type of system. And this was like the step up from the old bucket milkers and things like that. And there's still a lot of these in use today. We're definitely not the only ones that still use this, but it's not as popular as it used to be. So we'll go out in the barn now. We're going to get started milking, show you how these go on, kind of how they work, and kind of how the system out there works. So we're out here in the barn. So this machine here in the corner, this is our vacuum pump. And every dairy farm out there is probably going to have something similar to this. This makes the vacuum for the entire milking system. The whole system, the pulsation, the pulling the milk to the milk house, that's all vacuum. The only time it's pumped is when it goes from that receiver, that glass jar in there, pumps it into the tank. That's where your vacuum ends, and it can pump it from there. But otherwise it's all under vacuum. So we have 2 lines here. We have a stainless line, that's what the milk travels through. That has vacuum in it to pull the milk. And then this PVC line is just vacuum, and that runs your pulsation that opens and closes that inflation. Now a lot of people might think that with the vacuum that you're pulling the milk out of the cow, but that's not true. Actually run a very low vacuum at the cow And the cow has to be relaxed when they milk, because they have to let their milk down. That's just a natural occurrence of the cow. When you stimulate their udder when you prep the cow and you clean them, and that causes them to let their milk down, and they let it down into the milk unit, and then the vacuum kind of takes over from there. If you have too much vacuum, you can actually harm the cow. You can ruin the teat end, and it's not good. So it doesn't pull it out. And if the cow is not relaxed, is not comfortable, they're not going to let their milk down. You're not going to just turn up vacuum and pull the milk out of them. It's not going to happen that way. So yeah, so the pipeline, like I talked about, it runs around the whole barn and back into the milk house. So we will get started here. We'll get some cows prepped and get some milkers on. All right, so we'll get started with this cow. So we have a pre-dip here, or we actually use a sprayer. It just sprays out a light mist, and what that does is it disinfects any dirt on the teats, and it also helps loosen it up so it can be wiped off and nice and clean. So we spray that on. Maybe I can bring you down here and see. I'd like to leave that sit on there. I think they recommend 30 seconds to even a minute. If you leave it too long, it'll dry, and then you got to respray it, but give it enough time to kill any bacteria. So we have our milk unit hanging here. So this is the line the milk goes through. You can hear the vacuum there. And then this is our pulsator. You hear that clicking. It does one side, other side. It pulsates back and forth the sides, and it just opens and closes that rubber inflation. All right, she should have sat a long enough now, so should be able to wipe that off and get the milker on her. Make sure the ends are good and clean where the milk comes out. I usually squirt a little bit of milk out of each one just to make sure there's no infection or anything like that, and the milk looks good. Everything looks good on her. So now we'll put the milk unit on. So the milk unit will have a button on the bottom. You can turn the vacuum on. One thing the vacuum also does do is, because there is some vacuum at the cow, so it will hold the milker up to the cow also, so it doesn't fall off. And you can see the milk. She's letting her milk down into there, and it's pulling it up the hose. Goes through the cane here and onto the milk house. Now, each cow, depending on how much they milk, how fast they let their milk down, the time that the milker is on then can vary. We don't have automatic takeoffs. Some farms do, a lot of farms do. So they kind of meter the flow, and when the flow gets down to a certain amount, they automatically take the unit off. But ours, we just kind of watch. A lot of times I watch the cane. Once it gets where there's very little milk coming through there, and also kind of check the udder on the cow, make sure something, there was, for some reason she didn't milk out on a quarter, that gets milked out. Sometimes when you put that on, if the teat gets folded over a little bit or something, you don't notice right away. You have to fix that so that gets all milked out. So we'll leave her milk here, and then we'll show you how we take it off, and then how we final prep the cow, I guess, to seal her teats back up. So while we're waiting for her to finish, we'll come in the milk house here so you can see the milk coming in the jar here. And kind of what the jar does is it allows you to have the separation from the vacuum, because this whole jar has vacuum, and then there is a check valve down in here. So after that valve, then there's no more vacuum in here. So once the milk gets to a certain level, it touches a switch in there, turns on that pump, and then it can pump it out of there. Because you can't have vacuum, because the whole storage tank doesn't have vacuum in it, so you have to have a way to separate that. Otherwise you wouldn't be able, your end of your pipe would be open, it would just be sealed all the time. So it's getting ready to kick on here and pump it out. And there it is. It just keeps doing that the whole time we're milking, fills up and pumps down. And pretty simple, really. It works pretty well, pretty efficiently. So we'll get back here now. Our cow should be just about done. Yeah, so she's pretty much done now. You can see her udder is kind of deflated and kind of wrinkled up, so that's a good sign there. There's also not much for milk going through here anymore, and really not much coming over the cane anymore. So you're better off to actually leave a little bit of milk in the cow than you would be to over milk them, because you can cause more issues over milking the cow than you can if you leave a little in. So when we take the unit off, we just pull the button on the bottom that shuts the vacuum off, and it just comes right off. And then we have what we call a PostDip or a barrier dip. We use a barrier dip. There's many different kinds. This is an iodine dip. It's pretty thick, and it you can see it there, but it stays coated on pretty well. So what that'll do is it seals up the teat end right away, prevents bacteria and stuff from getting in there until it can naturally seal up on its own, because it takes a while for it to naturally seal back up, and in that span of time they can get infection in there. So this really helps with that. There, it's all sealed up, and that'll dry on there, and also has some disinfectants in it to help kill any germs, and it has some different emollients and stuff in there to soften the skin too, because you know, they get wet and they're in the dirt and stuff, and they can really get dried out. So the softer you can keep that skin, the better it is, the better they milk, and they stay clean, they seal up a lot better. So that's the main process. And then now that unit will just go on to another cow that we've prepped, and on down the line. We have 6 units, so we can do 6 at a time. If there's just one person milking, we typically use 4, because 6 can be a lot to keep up with, especially without the automatic takeoff. But anyway, that's pretty much how the milking goes in here. So once we get done with this, we'll kind of show you how the wash cycle goes, how we clean all this.
Alright, so what you just heard, that was that pump that went and took all the milk from the jar into this line, which then goes into this pipeline. Right around here there's a filter that'll stop any, you know, dirt or debris that might have still been on the teat or anything like that from getting into the bulk tank. So there's a filter right through there, then that milk goes into the bulk tank. So this is the bulk tank. It holds about 800 gallons of milk. So basically its job is it gets the milk in there, it stirs it, and it cools it. You can hear right now the compressor running. That's to help get the milk down below 40 degrees. Now everybody's been milked and grained, So now they're gonna go back outside. You can see they're chewing their cud right now. Right there, they're chewing. That's a sign that they're relaxed, they're comfortable, they're content, they're ruminating. We're done milking, so that pipeline now is out of the bulk tank, so we're gonna start washing milkers. That's the filter, that's the cloth filter that keeps any dirt or anything from getting into the bulk tank. So right now, he's just running a rinse of just clean water through all the pipeline in the barn. So it's gonna get some of the milk residue that was maybe still in the pipeline. So now he's getting a soap that will run through the next wash. So that's in that sink. That's really, really hot water because that soap is temp activated, super corrosive kind of soap. So not like your Dawn dish soap. Milkers are in that soap water, so then they'll circulate through the whole pipeline multiple times.
Of that, the biggest thing is your water temperature. Because if the water temperature gets below, I think it's 100 degrees or 110, something like that, then it will actually redeposit the milk fats back in the line. So you don't want your water to get too cold.
Yeah, that's the whole point of this being corrosive soap and things like that, is that to get the milk fat off of the pipeline.
It's a real highly chlorinated soap, and then the final wash we'll do, there's an acid that goes in, and then what that will do is it kind of finally goes through and cleans what this stuff loosened up. It also neutralizes this chlorine, so it basically cancels it out then, so then the line is clean and it's all good for milk to come through again.
All right, now that's the acid there, the pink stuff. And once the acid goes through and that clears the lines, then we just let straight air run through the lines for a little bit before we shut everything off. And there's the milk. You can see from it stirring that there's some cream at the top. Alright, so the line's pretty much all cleared out, so we just shut it off. Then that shuts off all the vacuum. What are you doing? Josh? What are you doing? Then they go back outside. What are you doing?
Playing.
Playing? You're playing in their food. Now after milking, the cows get to spend pretty much the majority of their time outside, eating, sleeping, whatever they want to do. These girls are hitting up the bale feeder. They're hitting up another bale feeder. And then there's quite a few of them that are just laying down, being comfortable. the pastures aren't really growing anymore, so not too much grazing going on right now. Hey Nellie, enjoying the view?